Okay. All right, so let's jump straight into the questions. This first question is from Gunjan Sharma. She actually has two questions, but I'll ask them separately. So let's start with this one. She asks, if a sadhaka is given service opportunity by Srimati Radharani and also by Krishna simultaneously, whose service should the sadhaka follow first?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's important to stress, as my Siksha Guru Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj did, that if in one's sadhana, Krishna, or let's say in this case, Radha, either one or both, appear, give darshan to the sadhaka, which would be typically something that occurred in the case of an advanced sadhaka. Sadhakas are those who are engaged in sadhana bhakti, but Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu also cites the example of Bilva Mangala Thakur as the sadhaka who was in bhava bhakti. Now, while Rupa Goswami makes a distinction between sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti, this sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, the middle stage, has kind of an overlapping that goes to both ends of the spectrum. It overlaps into sadhana because in bhava bhakti, the devotee is still a work, if you will, in progress. And there's practice, although it's more internal than external, and the external activities, for example, of hearing and chanting and so forth, these are arising out of the emotion that bhava is constituted of, whereas in sadhana bhakti, hearing and chanting is not driven by spiritual emotion consistently, but because we've heard that it's good, we've seen sadhus, Vaishnavas, our guru, do these things, and so we do them, and we understand philosophically that this will give rise to spiritual emotion in due course. So the point anyway is that in bhava bhakti there are activities like hearing, chanting, dancing, anubhavs, and so forth, and that is not the stage of perfection. Prema is the stage of perfection. So there's some overlapping, in a sense, between bhava bhakti and sadhana bhakti. And similarly, there's overlap between bhava bhakti and prema bhakti, because bhava bhakti is defined as a ray, if you will, of the sun of prema. Prema suryamsu samyabhak. And that is what is cultivated then. That ingress of prema is cultivated. So as I mentioned, Bilva Mangala Thakur, who was a bhava bhakta, is cited in in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu as the example of a sadhaka. One can say that one's sadhana is fully informed at that stage. In other words, the sambandha gyan has been realized, which in sadhana bhakti, our bhakti is being informed by it gradually. And when that is, I'm not just talking about acquiring information, although that's part of it, but integrating that information and allowing it, if you will, to drive our practice. And at a certain point, of course, as I say, it becomes realized. So therefore, in bhava bhakti, one's practice is fully informed, right? So when I say that should Krishna appear before the devotee or Radha in the sadhaka, as the question is, this would typically pertain to a very advanced sadhaka, perhaps a bhava bhakta. It could also appear in sadhana, it's possible, but it would be much more the exception. But referring to Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, I think it's important to stress what he instructed me, that should Krishna appear before you or Radha and ask for some service, then we should tell them both to wait a second and go and ask our guru that, is this the one you're talking about? Are these the two you're talking about? They asked me to do this. What is your opinion? So our access to direct service from Radha and Krishna comes through our guru, who is more than anything else or anyone else representing Krishna's will to us, and so forth. So we need to be grounded in Guru Bhakti in order for Krishna Bhakti to really be authentic. Therefore, for example, in Sadhana Bhakti, as articulated by Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, how does he begin? He gives the 64 angas of bhakti. And it begins with Guru Parashraya, taking shelter of the Guru. And then Shiksha Dikshadi, hearing from the Guru instructions, taking initiation, serving him affectionately. These are the beginning angas of bhakti, so of Krishna Bhakti. So within the context of Krishna Bhakti, Guru Bhakti is found. And Guru Bhakti is so important that Jiva Goswami mentions in Bhakti Sundarbha that while Guru Bhakti is an anga of Krishna Bhakti, as I'm explaining, citing Rupa Goswami, sometimes this is reversed for the devotee, for the disciple. And Krishna Bhakti becomes an anga of Guru Bhakti. So if we, for example, live with our Guru, we have the opportunity to serve him or her personally, it's possible that we may even neglect aspects of Krishna Bhakti for the sake of rising to the occasion and serving Sri Guru Bhakti. And in this case, where Krishna Bhakti becomes an aspect of Guru Bhakti, instead of the reverse, with the reverse being the normal. This is very, Jiva Goswami says, this is very pleasing to Krishna. So we can't underestimate or underemphasize the importance of Guru Bhakti. That said, if we go beyond sadhana bhakti, where kind of the question is more applicable in the context of the lila, Krishna may want something, Radha may want apparently something else. Then, of course, the choice will be dependent upon one's rasa, the circumstance, and so on and so forth. But it's only an appearance of difference. Radha and Krishna have no really different opinion. Superficially, there may be a difference of opinion, but the objective in each case is actually the same. Radharani may reject Krishna and express some anger with him, towards him, and refuse to see him and so forth. But this is all just a particular way in which love works at times. Rupa Goswami gives the example of a serpent. Ahir eva gati premna svabhava kutila bhavet. The serpent doesn't go in a straight line, it moves in a crooked line like this. So sometimes we have things that we call, for example, in English parlance, lovers' quarrel. You don't want to get in the middle of that, because it's actually an expression of love between the two. Sometimes it takes the form that it looks like they're in opposition. So this is a very sweet feature of Radha's love for Krishna, that she may oppose him and refuse to see him. So, but it means she wants to see him. So their opinions are not different in the larger sense. Radha and Krishna are one from the obeyed point of view. But there may be instances where where's some tension in the lila. An example is there in Bhagavatamrita of Sanatana Goswami, where Gopakumar has attained, he's telling his story to the Mathura Brahmin, and he gets to the point in his story where he has attained Goloka, and there he's known as Sarup. He's a Gopa. He's a Priyanarma Saka, an intimate friend of Krishna, who's privy to his romantic life and assists him, participates in it, serves Radha also. He finds himself to be a member of Radha's family, Parsana. But in telling his story to his disciple, he informs him that he was up for the day and ready to go herding cows with Krishna, but Radharani caught him and told him that there's a devotee on earth. I want you to go and bring him here. And so at that time he thought, Sarup or Gopakumar is saying, I thought Krishna would like to see me herding cows, and I would certainly like to be with him, but Radharani has asked me to do something that will get in the way of that. So I have a conflict here. It's kind of similar to your question. Of course, it's not referring to a sadhaka, but it more pertains, such a dilemma will pertain more, as I'm saying, to a siddha than to a sadhaka, to be sure. And in that instance, then he decided what? He decided that I will fulfill the desire of Radharani because Krishna will be very pleased by that. More so than if I show up. He might be disappointed I don't show up, but when he finds out I went on at her request to do something else, which can only be for him, for Krishna. She wants him to bring this other devotee into the Sakirasa Leelas, devotee on earth, the Mathura Brahmin. Forget his name now. So there's a different an instance in which a Priyanarma Saka shows the order of, if you will, of Radha over the general and known desire of Krishna, that he would become, as he would every other day, and join in the cow herding. But again, that is, in the context of the lila, when we say as a sadhaka, Krishna wants me to do this, Radharani wants me to do that. Typically, Radharani and Krishna want us to do something in the context of the lila, and sadhakas are not particularly attuned to the lila. They have service in this world to Radha and Krishna, and they learn about that, if you will, as I say, through their guru. But if you had to make a choice, and I think that Gopakumar sets a good example, which choose Radharani's desire, which can only be for the pleasure of Krishna. Ultimately, she cares for nothing else. So really, everything is about pleasing Krishna. Radharani is only about pleasing Krishna, even if she asks her to us to do something that seems different from what Krishna would want us to do. Well, she knows best, something like that, we would think. The whole, if you want to look at, for example, at the Manjari Bhav, where the Manjaris have this extreme devotion to Radharani, sometimes it's called Radha Dasyam, right? It's very peculiar because typically another devotee in the Leela whom we have a relationship with, we will love a little less than Krishna, or maybe equally with Krishna. But in the case of the Manjaris, they love Radha a little more than Krishna. And when we love the friend or another devotee equally, in this case, let's say Radharani, the personification of devotion itself, a little more, a little less, or equally, as some gopis do, in that situation, then that kind of love for Radharani is a sanchari bhav that augments their sthayi bhav for Krishna. But when, in the unique case where the love for Radharani is a little more than the love for Krishna, as in the case of the Manjaris, then the reverse happens, and the love of Krishna becomes like a sanchari bhav that augments their love for Radha. So this is an extreme case, and Raghunath Das Goswami has made a statement that, who cares for Krishna? Whatever Radharani wants, this is I'll pursue. This is an extreme, kind of a statement of his. Without the service of Radharani, everything becomes meaningless to me. Vrindavan becomes meaningless. Krishna becomes meaningless. And these are extreme statements of bhava. But that bhava is the underpinning of that is, of course, the tattva. And what is the tattva when we look at Radha Dasyam or Manjari Bhav? It's from a tattva point of view. If we hear the tattva, we may think, well, it's better to serve Radharani. Why? Because it's more pleasing to Krishna. So even though the bhava, from the bhava perspective, and kind of the beta perspective, it looks like there's a difference. We're choosing Radharani's service over Krishna. From the tattva perspective and the abhed, the non-different perspective, it's all about serving Krishna. So Vrindavan is all, Radharani is only about serving Krishna. She has no other desire whatsoever. So I hope that helps, but I think it's important to emphasize in this world and for the life of the sadhaka that these, if you have the darshan of Radha and Krishna and they give you conflicting opinions, you should talk to your guru about that. You should ask him about that, get an answer in a particular instance, whether it's your imagination, whether it's real, and if so, how to proceed. This is it just brings to mind something that came up on our forum on the Facebook called Prema Bhakti, and all of you should join that if you're on the Facebook Prema Bhakti. I comment on there sometimes, and I was asked about the fact that the cowherd boys, they wanted to enter the mouth of Aghasura, and Krishna didn't want them to enter. How could their will outweigh Krishna's will? And of course, I pointed out that Krishna wills that, or desires that such devotees who are his intimate associates, who become his he wants that devotees become his intimate associates, and in which case, to be intimate associates, there has to be some conflict. You can't have Mother Yasoda doing whatever Krishna wants. How could she be his mother and do whatever he wants, and a good mother, and never correct him, never tell him he's wrong, and so forth. So this is a very peculiar idea, right? There seems to be a different desire between the devotee and Krishna, two different wills: Krishna's will and the devotee's will. But this is the nature of bhakti rasa, and Krishna likes that. So, but the point here, the point worth underscoring is this kind of comes to mind as I answer this particular question. It's a little different, but it's somewhat related. That this is a very, very high thing. In other words, the desire to only serve God and to act accordingly with no separate interest, only with a desire to serve God, is a very high thing. But Sakya Rasa, Madhurya Rasa, includes that, and it far, far, far exceeds it. It's far above and beyond that, which is a very high thing. That being, I only desire to serve Krishna, and I act in that way. or for God. I only want to please God, and I'm acting accordingly. That's a very high thing. But Bhakti Rasa in Braj, in Golok, includes that, but is above and beyond that. And it takes an appearance of as if there are conflicting desires. Krishna has will, the devotees have will. Their will is one with his will, but his will is ultimately that he wants to please the devotees. That's what Krishna's like. What pleases Krishna? The pleasure of his devotees. So he will acquiesce, if you will, to their desire repeatedly. But that is a very, very, very high thing. So we talk about that. And Prabhupada was more quiet about that and didn't enter into such discussions. Some other devotees only talk about that. Puja Patrita Maharaj come up somewhere in the middle, and I like to come up somewhere in the middle also. It's important to talk about it to some extent, especially in the times now in which we live compared to the time when Prabhupada was here. There's much more information about Gaudiya Siddhanta and the nature of Bhakti Rasa and so forth. So many books have been made available in English language that weren't available at the time. So it's important for a teacher to have some command of those texts and their appropriate times to speak about them. And I do, and have written books about such topics as well. My recent books will be published soon. Circle of Friends is a very elevated text, and there's a place for that. But it's important, very important at the same time, to stress just how high that is. We give a book a taste about that, some information about that's very useful. But at the same time, we have to keep a focus on where we are in all of this and grounded in the our present reality and what the next steps are and so forth. And in this regard, I mean, nothing could be more central, essential, and important to us than Guru Bhakti. And there, our questions are answered. Even if Krishna asks us to serve him or Radharani, I said, we ask our Guru, is that who you're talking about? And this is what they asked. Is that, do you agree? So, all right, I hope that helps. You said you had another question?
Yes, yeah, thank you for that, Ramaj. So the next question from Gunjan Sharma is, what should be our mood in doing services contrary to our personality?
Well, I think that there's Bhakti is very generous, very, very user-friendly. To give a very broad example, in Bhakti, there's a place for sadhakas to be married and have children. In the sadhana of yoga marg or gyan marg, that's not the case. We find that articulated in the 6th chapter of the Gita, Astanga Yoga. Celibacy is one of its angas, one of its limbs. Similarly with the gyan marg, one of the limbs of that path is celibacy. So this is for contemplatives who have passed through householder life. Bhakti is more generous, and it can be more generous because it has greater power. Because after all, Gyan and Yoga are governed by Sattva Guna, and Bhakti is governed by the Nirguna. So it has extraordinary power, and therefore it can digest, if you will, that situation for a householder and turn it into something spiritual, right? Make, as they say sometimes, lemonade out of lemons. So given the power of Bhakti and the generous nature of Bhakti, I mean, in Bhakti, we are to be one-minded like in any other yoga, but the extent to which we can be one-minded, we could be one-minded about kirtan, we could be one-minded about archan. There are so many different angas of Bhakti, the different ways to think about Krishna, different ways to serve Krishna, the entirety of our human capacity. I mean, in Rupa Goswami's 64 angas of bhakti, there are angas of speech, angas of thought, angas of action, so body, mind, words. It's very, very friendly, user-friendly in this context, in this sense. So there's quite a bit of opportunity to embrace angas of bhakti and services that do correspond with my material personality and my material samskars, which again makes it easier, right? By which I can overcome them in due course. So I've given an example before that comes to mind in this regard. We are taught that we should cultivate tolerance. Mahaprabhu said this, Tirora Pisishna, more tolerant than the tree. So we should learn to tolerate, but we are also told to create a favorable situation for our practice. So we should create a favorable situation for our practice. And in the context of that, there will be things that we have to tolerate and tolerate them. Not that we should just tolerate any situation. There's room to change your situation if it's not favorable. So there's ample room to get around, to a large extent, the problem that this question presents. How, forget exactly the question, but how should I feel about serving in ways that are contradictory to my nature, my material samskars? Well, as I say, I'm saying there's a lot of room to get around that, but there may be instances where such arises that it's clear that I'm called upon for some service that's against my nature. Now, let's say our guru says, I would like you to do this, and it's against my nature. Then there is possibility to inform the guru respectfully, my nature is such, and I'm wondering if I will really be the best person to do that. Okay, that kind of back and forth is useful. Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj was chosen by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to go to the West and be his missionary, the first missionary, emissary from Gaudiya Vaishnavas to the Western world. But he, upon being chosen, he suggested that it's possible, Gurudev, with all due respect, that there are others amongst us who are more qualified. My English is not as good as others, number one. Two, my nature is that I'm very introverted, where others are more outgoing. That may be more useful. And thirdly, well, I don't know how much longer you'll be with us, and I feel that if I could really take advantage of your company personally, that would be my preference. But with that said, if you desire, I will go. And so he changed his mind, Bhaktisiddhanta, with that kind of input. So I think that is a good example. And I try to educate my own students in this regard. If I say, I want you to drive from Audarya Gurnish to San Francisco tomorrow morning, and meanwhile, he's been up all night doing something else that I asked him to do and getting an ounce of sleep. It might be in his interest and mine and the interest of the service to say, I will do it, Guru Maharaj, but I might fall asleep at the wheel because I've been up all night. Then I would say, oh, okay, wait, we'll send somebody else, or I'll go myself even, or we'll put it off to another day. So that kind of input is respectful input is desired. And respectful input means, well, to present it respectfully and with the condition that, but should you desire it anyway, despite my input, then okay, I shall do. And then he might say, okay, good, don't do. You might say, well, Guru Maharaj, I've been up all night, I might fall asleep at the wheel, but if you really want me to go, I will. And I say, okay, then go. Then you go and get the keys. And I say, no, don't go. I was just checking to see if you were just talking. You're actually, if that was actually your position. So still, despite this, there still may be opportunities or circumstances in which we have some service to do that doesn't work with our nature. I would think that would be more of the exception, given what I've said. And that could be adjusted and so forth. But sometimes it happens that we have to do things that are against our nature, and we should do them to the best of our abilities. Opportunity to grow in that, and we can understand. Well, this is my material conditioning. The speaking, the service is actually absolute. It's necessary. So let me take this as an opportunity to transcend it. But those are difficult times, and we should try to. You want to bend the steel, but you don't want to break it. So again, I speak as I have that if we reveal our minds and speak about our limitations and so forth to our instructors and our guru and so on, I think that will be helpful, and that can make those circumstances less the norm. So I hope that helps.
Okay, the next question is from Braj Sundari. She says, I listened to an old class of Guru Maharaj's where he mentioned that he did some preaching with Bhakti Abhaya Narayana Maharaj. It would be nice if Guru Maharaj shared some memories about it and about Bhakti Abhaya Narayana Maharaj.
Well, Bhakti Abhaya Narayana Maharaj was a friend of mine. He had so much respect for me that it was embarrassing to me. But I was famous in ISKCON. And of course, I didn't know him for years. He was serving in communist countries. He was from Hungary. But after the departure of Prabhupada from our presence, he, like myself, came under the shelter of Pujyapada Sridhar Maharaj, and he accepted sannyas from Pujyapada Sridhar Maharaj. And so at that time, I got to know him. And he and I and two other godbrothers of mine, sannyasis, who were about Narsingha Maharaj, who's passed away, and at that time, Paramahiti Maharaj, we were all friends, the four of us. We had much in common, and we would meet in Vrindavan every year, once or twice a year, Kartik, Gaur Purnim, and we would meet at the Math, and after Chaitanya Saraswati Math, and after Sridhar Maharaj passed away, we were carrying on with missions that we had started under his direction, Sridhar Maharaj's direction during his presence. And so, we had that in common, and so I became close with Bhakti Abhaya Narayana Maharaj at that time. And he, in the 80s, late 80s, he petitioned me to please come to Eastern Europe, and he would like to take me around and meet the devotees that he had been culturing and so forth. And he asked me to go to Russia with him, and his desire was that he would preach and I would initiate everybody in Russia. And I said, at that point I had an epiphany, or underscored some understanding of my own about something that Sridhar Maharaj had said, because Prabhupada asked Sridhar Maharaj to come and reside in Mayapur, and that he would bring his disciples from all over the world to hear from Sridhar Maharaj. He would build a house for him and make a lift, an elevator in the house. He would be on the second floor, Prabhupada would be on the first floor. They would make a lift so that he wouldn't have to go up the stairs, and Sridhar Maharaj would reside there, and devotees from all over the world who come to Mayapur would be able to hear from him. And Sridhar Maharaj at that time thought, well, I'll think about it, but he was thinking, I'm not going to live very long. He's younger than me a year or two, but he's very active, going all over the world, and it's his mission, and that's just his generosity that he's speaking like that, and so forth. When he was requested like this from Prabhupada and didn't come without saying all the things that I just said, which were basically what was on his mind. Some devotees in ISKCON, they criticized him. Prabhupada wanted him, he didn't come, and so forth. But when, as they say, Narayana Maharaj asked me to go to Russia and initiate disciples, and he would preach, I said, I'm not going to do that. You should initiate. You're the great preacher here in Eastern Europe, and so forth and so on. But I did go, not to Russia, but I did go on one trip with him. And Visnu Maharaj, our godbrother, who had taken sannyas from Nrsimha Maharaj, came with us, the three of us, and we went through Romania, which was what the countries were called then, Yugoslavia, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Czechoslovakia, I believe. And one of the highlights was when we came into Romania at the customs at the border. They asked us, do you have any drugs, guns, or Bibles, something like that? Books and Bibles, We did, we had books, we were smuggling books in. So we said no, but we had them. We smuggled them in. But he had a route, Bhakti Abhaya Narayana Maharaja, that he chalked out, and he would meet people in very ordinary circumstances, and very covertly preach to them. So, for example, one night he set us up in a cabin in the lodge. Said, "You stay here, and I'm going to go out. I'm going to meet some people." And so he went to a bar, and in the bar he sat, and he didn't drink, but other people were drinking, and then he'd chat with people, and we happened to meet a guy that he had talked to before he came back that night, and who came by the lodge we were staying in, and he was telling us, he was all excited. And so we were all excited that Maharaj had, made this guy a devotee. And so when Maharaj came back, we said, "Oh, we met that guy, we're going to take him with us." He said, "No, he was drunk. When he wakes up in the morning, he's sober. He'll wish he had never said anything like that, because who knows, the bartender might have heard and reported him, and so on and so forth." So it was very interesting and unique kind of circumstances in which he, in a very covert, clandestine kind of way, he preached. But some of the places that we went, then we met the people that he had connected with and made devotees, and they very much, when they saw him, they just very much lit up. He was like a father figure to them, coming, and so it was very inspiring to me personally, and to Visnu Maharaj. And in Bulgaria, I met the largest group, really, of his students there. And one of his students, Tirtha Maharaj, who later took sannyas, was, I remember very well, and he is successfully carrying on the mission of Narayana Maharaj in Bhakti Abhaya Narayana Maharaj in Hungary. And I heard from Sadhvi that he regularly listens to my talks and reads my books and cites them and so forth. So we have a connection with that, a good connection with that mission through my relationship with Narayana Maharaj. He was a very interesting person. His name was Dwarkadish, as a brahmachari, and he underwent with great obstacles and so forth. He pursued the mission of Prabhupada in Eastern Europe. What else?
Okay, and the next question is from Prema from Poland.
Prema Das.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Yes. Guru Maharaj, my question is, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the soul is superior to even intelligence. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada comments on verse 3.40, lest the intelligence influence the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with the matter and thus with the mind and senses. From this statement, it follows that in the conditioned state, the soul is guided and subordinate to intelligence. So, Guru Maharaj, in your commentary on verse in Bhagavad Gita 3.43, you say that being theoretically aware of one's own position as a pure soul, one can begin to differentiate oneself from the sensual, mental, and intellectual planes of experience and thus rise above lust. The awakened soul is in a position to direct his intellect. So my question is, does this relationship between intelligence and soul change and depend on the state of consciousness? Could you harmonize it?
Yes, I think that where I said in my commentary that you cited that the conditioned soul is in a position to control his intelligence, right?
Yes.
Take charge over it. If you look at the sentences prior to that, what I'm speaking about there is really a sadhaka. So a sadhaka is a conditioned soul, but not a conditioned soul, because materially conditioned soul unto itself, we're speaking about a situation where the Atma has no rudder, no captain to the ship, and is simply under the influence of material nature. But a sadhaka is also a conditioned jiva and not pure, nonetheless has a captain to the ship, so to speak, and direction, and has the theoretical, as I mentioned in the commentary, knowledge that he himself as an Atma is superior to body, mind, and intellect. And therefore, by applying the Atma, applying itself in relation to sadhana and the ingress of Swarup Shakti from above, then that conditioned soul, we call a sadhaka, is in a position to rise above the intellect and so forth. But without that, no, that's the difference. Does that help?
Yes, yes.
Jai.
Thank you.
Okay, the last question is from Uddhava.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, can you hear me?
Yes.
I've been reading the Bhagavatam for the Dhruva Maharaj chapter. I was thinking about what you say, that in the Bhagavatam, all the main devotees, their deity in a way is Krishna. And he went to Madhuban to do his yoga, Dhruva Maharaj. But then why Vishnu appears in many cases then in the Bhagavatam?
Why Vishnu appeared to Dhruva, despite the fact that Dhruva was in the Braj.
Yes, and that you said that Krishna is the main deity of the Bhagavatam, of the devotees of the Bhagavatam.
Well, yes, Krishna is the main deity. That's true, but Dhruva received the mantra from Narada. I forget, is it Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, something to that?
Yes.
It's not particularly appealing to. He's not engaged in Braj Bhakti. He's not engaged in that kind of sadhana, right? He's engaged in a different kind of sadhana, and he's also engaged in the petitioning of God for material reasons. So not only is he he not engaged in the sadhana of rag bhakti, the deity for which is Krishna, the attainment of which is Krishna Prema. But his Vaidhi bhakti towards Vasudeva, which is, this is a name for Narayan and Vaikuntha. The Chatur view was there. Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. So Narayan is the Vasudeva. But his Vaidhi bhakti is also mixed with a material desire. So this is a very different type of sadhana than the type of sadhana which Krishna is the predominating deity, and the goal and the attainment is Krishna Prema. So Vishnu appeared before him. That's who he was petitioning, despite the fact that he had material desire, and then made his material desire look as small as it is, such that Dhruva said, I was looking for broken pieces of glass and I found a valuable jewel. And then he didn't want that desire to be fulfilled anymore, that he would have a kingdom, but still Narayan gave him the kingdom, right? So, yeah, I have said, and I don't know if this is what you're referring to, that all of the principal speakers and questioners are, the Jiva Goswami makes this point, and Krishna Sandarbha are devotees of Krishna, but Dhruva seems to be a devotee of Narayan. That's true. So maybe there's an exception there, or maybe he's not considered one of the principal speakers of the text, although there's quite a bit said about him. But he's an example of mixed devotion and the virtues of such. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Marge, I had a quick follow-up on that one. You said the virtues of mixed devotion. What are the virtues of mixed devotion?
Well, there are virtues of mixed devotion. There's no doubt about that. Any devotion in our life brings real meaning and real virtue to it.
Oh, okay. So compared to material life.
Yeah, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, by karma mishra bhakti, one can go to Vaikuntha.
I thought you were looking at it from the Sudha Bhakti point of view. I was like, what is the virtue of mixed bhakti? So, okay, I just didn't understand it.
Okay, so I see some comments here. Does anybody else have a question? I have a question. Uddhava has asked a question. Shraddha Devi says, it is unfortunate that I don't have sound. Okay, well, those are technical questions. I can't help you with that.
Actually, Gunjan Sharma still has some more questions that I was going to ask next week, but I could ask one of those.
Okay.
She says, does the present personality, likes, dislikes, and so on, play a role in one's eternal service in Golok? Or is it Krishna's desire to give us a particular role as per his liking? If it is our liking, then it can change with every birth. So how can this be explained?
Typically, we have material samskars and, well, vrittis or impressions that are similar form a samskar. And when the samskar becomes mature, it becomes a vasana. That means it becomes an actual propensity in your life that causes you to have a disposition, personality, and so on and so forth. So these acquired material samskars, they typically don't have anything to do with our spiritual identity. And they're changing, as you say, to one extent or another, from life to life. And so therefore, typically, it is thought that in the initial stage of bhakti, cheto darpana marjanam, the chitta will be cleansed of these vrittis, samskars, and vasanas, right? And then with bhakti sadhana, sadhu sangha, and so forth, impressions of bhakti will be imprinted upon the chitta. And these will give rise to our spiritual identity, nisarga. It's nisarga. The identity is swarup, it's there, but as is the condition with some nityasiddhas, similarly, Ujjwal Nilamani and the commentaries teach is the case for sadhana siddhas as well. There's an inherent identity that is given rise to or apparently caused by something external, which is the ingress of bhakti samskars, spiritual practice, and so on and so forth. But it's giving rise to something that's already there. Just like we see in Nitya Siddhas in the Prakat Lila, by external influence, they hear about Krishna in the Lila, and then their love for him awakens, but it's already there. So anyway, the teaching there, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on this section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, does not apply only to Nitya Siddhas, but also to Sadhana Siddhas. There are other examples to which to emphasize the point that we've come to in these type of discussions, that the identity is inherent and at the same time it is bestowed. Both things are there. So Swarup, Nisarga. But and so typically we tend to emphasize that the material disposition, material personality, material samskars, they don't have anything to do with our spiritual identity. Now that said, there's ways in which they could, relatively speaking. Let's say, for example, we have an intellectual type of a disposition, and therefore, on the basis of that, we become attracted to a guru that has an intellectual type of presentation of the teaching. Not all of them do. Gorkashore Das Babaji didn't have that type of a presentation, and Bhakti Siddhanta had that type of disposition, but he was drawn to him. But it's possible that because of our material conditioning, we'll be drawn to a particular guru superficially. It will have an effect. It will have a role, so to speak, but it's relative. Under the influence of the guru, then those samskars will go away, right? The heart will become cleansed and so forth. And then the deeper reason for us being attracted to a particular sangha and a particular ideal and so forth will come to the fore. Now, there's another consideration here as well, and that is that in material life, in the material world, there are two principal currents that are influencing the way in which people move, and that is karma and bhakti. So the world has no beginning, karma has no beginning, and bhakti in the world has no beginning either. So there are always sadhakas in the world. Krishna comes to the world for sadhakas who have reached a certain point in their sadhana. They can't bear his separation, and he can't bear theirs. And therefore the lila, prakat lila, begins again. This is one way of looking at the prakat lila. As Krishna says, Paritranaya sadhanam, vinashaya traduskritam. Paritranaya sadhanam, I come for the devotees. That's my main reason. Who are in this world, who are pining for me, and I, in their sadhana deeply, and I cannot bear their separation any longer. It's the implication. So he comes. So because bhakti is in the world, it's possible that devotees in this life have bhakti samskars from previous lives, and a guru who is wise and realized can see that, that there are certain things about this person that are based on bhakti, and there are certain things about this person that are based on material samskars. Now, for the devotee, it just seems like that's just me. You can't distinguish one necessarily from the other, but the guru may be able to see that. So there are things about our personality that are based on something spiritual, based on previous lives or this life and so forth. So the guru will recognize that and then help that devotee to anchor herself or himself on a particular pursuit for, let's say, Sakya Rasa or Madhurya Rasa, as may be the case. So that That's the general answer, I think. Hope that helps. With that, we pretty much come to a close here of our time. Nice to speak with all of you. Everything good, all good. My health is good. My practice is good. My sangha is good. And it's good to be with all of you. I expect to be with you again next week. I see some of you. I see Brigu. I see Saragrahi, Haribo. I see Prem Das. I see Uddhava. Let me go through who else is here. Okay, I see Harijan, Madhuban devotees, Premanand, Sadhvi. Where's that? Brajhari. Yes, Haribo. Brajhari. Shraddha Devi in Canada. And Kalchandra. Are you in Mexico, Kalchandra? Yes. Okay, good to see you. Mohini in Brighton. Ananta Govinda, not too far from me, a little bit south. Kanaram on the east coast of the United States. Gopal Nandini also there. Bhajan Das, not sure where you are, but you're here. That's good. I see Ram Mohan, I think you're in Germany with Ganga Shakti, who's also here. Ben Summers, not sure where you are, but you're here, right? So I don't know if we've had a question from you, but it's nice to see you on here. And let's see, I see somebody, iPhone Pep, P-E-P-P. I'm not sure who that is, Pepe. Okay, maybe that's Madhavi in Mexico. I see, Kamalaksha must mean Krishangis nearby. And Atul Krishna in Poland. Mahamantra, North Carolina, Shamsundar, of course, in Madhuvan, Madhavananda Das, all the way from Mayapur, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Chaitanya Charan from Chile, and Vijay Kumar, he's in California, Lita Saki, our copy editor and proofreader, who's working diligently, has been on my book, much appreciated. Excellent service and attitude in Kansas at the community there with Indranuja called Bhakti Ban. I see Murli Dar, not far from me, but busy. He usually comes over on Sunday. I don't know if he's coming today, but I hope so. And then there's Pixel 6A, not sure who that is. Vamsi Dadi in San Francisco. LR, not sure. Drishta in Colorado. Nice to see you. Oh, quite a few here. Ram Das, North Carolina. And Brajahari, I thought we already counted him. So anyway, nice. I'm just going through this, so forgive me, but nice to see all of you. And I hope to see you again next Sunday. Haribol.
Haribol, thank you very much. A quick announcement about the Tattva Vivek class series. It's going to be Sham Sundar next Thursday. He's continuing his 24 gurus of the Bhagavatam, and it's going to be the moon this week. So let's see what it will bring us. Okay, thanks so much, everybody. Let's meet up next week again. Hari.